Welcome. My name is Linda Vickers, and I have a special friend with me today. Her name is Valerie Arbo, and Valerie lives in Canada. She's a mom of two children who have different special needs. She's been married for 29 years. Congratulations, that's a long time. And she's a physiotherapist by day and is certifying as a health coach in her spare time. So very busy mom, very busy lady. So Valerie, where in Canada are you living?
I live in Calgary, Alberta, and I've been here for quite a number of years. We had 2 years where we went back to the East Coast. That's where my husband is from.
Okay.
And then we decided to come back to Calgary, mainly because the Alberta is probably one of the better provinces in Canada with regards to special needs and serving the population of people with special needs.
Okay. So would you like to share about your kids?
Sure.
How old are your, first of all, how old are your kids now?
I have two girls, and my oldest is 19, and my youngest is 16.
Okay. So two girls. So tell me about your first daughter.
So my first daughter is Melody Ann. My husband and I were 7 years trying to get pregnant. I had fibroids, which was preventing me from getting pregnant. I had surgery in, I think it was 2000 to remove the fibroids. I thought I only had one, but turns out I had 7. One of them was very large. So as a consequence of that, I then was told that I would need to have a C-section if I was ever going to get pregnant.
Okay.
So that's Melody Ann. And then we have Ebony, who is 16 and currently identifying as non-binary. And yes, so that's been a little bit of a challenge. And Ebony has ADHD.
Okay. Okay. So now Melody Ann, love the name.
Thank you.
Yes. So can you tell me about Melody Ann? So you were trying for 7 years to have a child.
Yeah, 7 years we were trying, and it gets difficult watching for your menstrual cycle, hoping it's not going to come, praying it's not going to come, and there you are again. So I had 7 years of that.
And watching other moms.
Exactly,
Yes.
which was really difficult when you're in a larger church. And in my peer group, there were a lot of ladies at the time getting pregnant. And it was like, is it ever going to be my turn, Lord? It was hard, and going to those baby showers and putting on the smile and being excited and fussing over the baby and just wondering if I was ever going to hold a baby of my own in my own arms.
Right.
So that was tough. That was tough.
Did you feel like you were like going through almost like a hope deferred, almost a grief in the waiting process?
It didn't become hope deferred until towards the end. Through those 7 years, we kept hoping. And I'm just thinking of Zachariah and Elizabeth when they were hoping and praying for a child, and then came to the conclusion that it was likely not going to happen. And I would say that was probably similar for Scott and I. We just continued to hope. We continued to pray. We continued to know that God is a God of miracles, and He can make all things happen,
right,
in accordance with His will. And we just were continuing to pray and claiming promises in the Bible about, that God gives us with children. So when we got to, I was 38, when it came to my 38th birthday, it was kind of like, okay, at some point, enough is enough. And at some point, I just have to accept that maybe this is not God's will for my life. And the same for Scott. So on my 38th birthday, that's when we decided, okay, 7 years of trying, watching my menstrual cycle come and go. We decided that was going to be it. There just needed to be an end date for my own sanity.
Right. And so did you find just like placing that down, letting it go, had you worked up to that process, or was it a painful process to just let it go?
It was a painful process to let it go, because you're hoping and dreaming, and you're praying that this is God's will. You're seeing other people having their dreams fulfilled, and yours is not. So it was hard. It was hard to lay it down and to move on to a new chapter of being childless. So yeah, that was not an easy process to take on.
Right, because your dreams of how your family is going to look and how your home is going to be,
Yes.
yeah, how your future could be, yeah. Because it's not just letting go of the idea of having kids, it's letting go of the dream.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Long, a dream that we've been dreaming for such a long time. 7 years was a long time.
and likely more even up, like leading up to that, like even as a girl, you were likely babysitting and, oh well, one day I'll have children, and so to lay it down, that would have been hard.
Extremely hard, extremely
Yeah.
hard. But I realized that God is a God that's sovereign, and God has a plan, and God has a purpose.
Mhm.
So I just had to trust. And it was difficult because I was just trying to, with my relationship with God, getting closer, and as you say, sort of dreaming from childhood, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, maybe this is not going to be part of who I'm going to be. This is not going to be part of my life. This is not going to be my life going forward, what I've been dreaming about. But then I had to kind of think, okay, Lord, whatever your will is, I'm
Mhm.
going to go with that. But it
Yeah.
was not an easy road. It was not an easy road.
No, no, it wouldn't have been. So when you did that, then what happened? How did you feel with like, did it take months or years or?
Well, I was fortunate after Scott and I had laid down that dream, surrendered it to God, and submitted to whatever God's will was for our life. Then the very next month, we actually got pregnant.
The stress was gone.
Yeah. Yes, the very next month I was pregnant. And I'll never forget the day. Kind of mentioned to Scott, well, I think maybe we need to go get a pregnancy test. And he's like, okay. So then we go to the mall, we go to Shoppers Drug Mart, we pick up the test, and he's like, okay, can we do it here? No, honey, I think this is something we need to do at home. So we came home, I did the test, and you kind of have to leave it for a minute. So I left it on the side of the tub, and so actually, no, I gave it to Scott, and I just said, okay, so let me know. Anyway, so it was just, Cynthia, you're pregnant. We're pregnant. And just the joy on his face, like it was just amazing.
Aww.
Just to see my husband become a little boy because he'd got something that he had been hoping for such a long time.
Right.
It was just a beautiful moment. I still actually have that pregnancy test.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
Well, what a surprise gift.
Totally. I cannot describe the closeness that Scott and I sort of experienced during the pregnancy, and just the closeness to God. Like I just felt so connected to God, and we were just glowing. I was just glowing. I was one of those sort of model pregnancy moms. I didn't gain any weight other than in the front. I felt great. I had energy, and praise God, I didn't throw up because I don't do vomit. So the only thing that was negative was the metal taste I had in my mouth. But it was just such a beautiful pregnancy. It was just, like I say, I just can't describe to you how close I felt to God. I just felt so connected to Him because He had answered my prayer of 7 years.
Yeah. Wow. So it would have really been, you would have been hyper aware of everything.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was journaling everything. I was noticing everything. I remember Scott telling me you need to eat 10 veggies and 10. He was so invested in this pregnancy. He wanted to make sure that I was the best incubator I could be.
It's funny what we do when we're pregnant, though. I had a journal to give to my baby about how I felt when I was pregnant. Yeah, I don't know that he really enjoyed it, but I did.
It was an
Yeah.
amazing time. It was an amazing time.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Wow. So then what happened?
So then we came to the 39th week. I was going to have a C-section because I'd had prior surgery. I'd had fibroids removed in 2000.
Right.
So I knew I was going to have a C-section, but I managed to get a chest infection. So I was coughing really hard. And the C-section was planned for actually 2 days before the due date, because normally it happens, or it can happen within a 2-week period, but my gynecologist obstetrician was on vacation, and so we'd scheduled it, and I was feeling fine. I was feeling great, and I was figuring, well, while I could enjoy the baby being inside, I would just enjoy that pregnancy feel. And we had, I remember the morning, it was a Friday morning, the 19th of April 2002, before 6 o'clock. I was coughing really hard, and then I felt something coming out from between my legs, and I thought,
oh wow,
I knew she was breech, so I just figured, well, oh gosh, maybe her legs. I didn't know I was in labor because I didn't have the classical labor signs and the breaking of the water, so I didn't really know that I was in labor. I just knew that something had come out. So my husband called the ambulance. I remember them coming, and I remember traveling to the hospital with this gentleman's hand up my vagina holding the baby in place.
wow.
I don't know how Scott got to the hospital. He must have flown there, but he drove to the hospital. They did an emergency C-section. I was out. I didn't know what was going on. Scott actually managed to get there for the birth, and we were blessed that the emergency guy, EMS guy actually stayed with Scott.
That's kind of that's unusual, isn't it?
Yeah, but he stayed with Scott.
Nice.
So we had the emergency C-section. Melody Ann was put on life support, and both Scott and I are healthcare professionals, so we've worked in intensive care before. So it didn't really dawn on us for probably 24 hours how serious our baby's condition was, because we just figured, oh yeah, people are on incubators. Incubator, she was in an incubator, but she was on a ventilator, and we figured, she would be strong and get over it, and probably, everything would be fine. So it was just some of the conversations that the doctors were having. And I remember being in a private room and thinking, I didn't ask for a private room. And I remember that in the NICU that they never gave me Melody Ann to do the skin on skin thing. And I was like, oh, they truly thought she would pass away that weekend. When the neonatologist came in on Monday morning, he fully expected Melody Ann to be gone.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, wow. What a shock.
Yeah. So not only were we dealing with having a new baby, but we were being told that our baby would have disabilities and that they did not expect her to live past a year. So that was a lot to take on. That was a lot to deal with. And I remember when I realized and sort of understood the severity of what Melody Ann was dealing with, it's like, really, Lord? Really? You gave us 7 years to try to get pregnant. We gave up. You gave me the opportunity of having a beautiful baby. And then we come to this. I have a baby that's disabled. I have a baby that's not expected to live. Why, Lord? Why did I ever get pregnant in the first place? So it was really hard to deal with infertility on its level, and then have a beautiful pregnancy, and now I'm dealing with a child that's not expected to live. I just felt it was quite cruel, and I didn't understand where God was coming from, and it was extremely difficult. We had to look at our baby with the ventilator and tubes on her head and IVs in her leg, because it was hard to get veins for her. And it was, even amongst that, I was able to look and see a beautiful baby. And I was blessed that she's gorgeous, and she was a gorgeous baby, and it still is gorgeous. But it was really hard to see my baby, as big as she was, because she was 8 pounds and change. So she was a big baby. She was almost 9 pounds. And then compared her to all the little other babies that are in NICU that were premature, etc. And just to think there was something wrong with my baby. I'd waited so long, and God, you allowed this to happen. It was hard.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine. So did you have, did that bring you and Scott closer together? Because often that can be even more difficult.
It can be for some. Um, it kept us together. We're together 29 years. I'm fortunate that he has been such a hands-on father, and both, I think it helped that both of us have come from a medical background. My husband's a nurse, and both, as I said, both of us have worked ICU. So it was helpful, I think, for that. And I think having faith, even though I can't speak for Scott's journey, and it was interesting, we were kind of not necessarily going simultaneously through the ups and downs of understanding what was going on with Melody and understanding what her life would look like, trying to wrap our heads around the fact that she was only supposed to live a year. So we were on the same journey, but at different levels, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
when I was down, he might be coping. When I was kind of coping, he might be down. There might be times when we were coping at the same time and times we were down at the same time. But it was hard for me to maintain a relationship with God because I felt so let down. I felt so disappointed. I felt
Abandoned.
Like my heart had been ripped out and abandoned. Like Lord, and because we had been so close during the pregnancy, because I felt so connected to him, it was so hard. It was so hard. I totally felt like the wind had been taken out of my sails and that I'd been punched real hard in the stomach. But because I had faith and because we were told Melody Ann would only have up to a year, I felt it was my duty as a mother to introduce her to Jesus. So my teaching Melody Ann about Jesus and showing her who he was my thread of connection to God during that first year of her life. And I will never forget the story of Jairus. Was the story that the children, the kindergarten, actually not kindergarten, cradle-roll children were going through at the time. So that was the lesson that they were learning, how Jesus had been asked by Jairus to go to be with his daughter. His daughter was dying, and Jesus was detained for very good reasons. And when he got there, she had already died. And I remember thinking, but Lord, you spoke over her and you raised her from the dead. I'm just asking for some brain cells to be regenerated. Can we just do that? And understanding that not my will, but your will. That was really hard. But my thought was, she needs to know who Jesus is because that's my parental responsibility. If I want to see her in heaven, I need her to know who he is and introduce her to him. So I went through her Sabbath school lessons every week with her, every day, prayed over her breast milk that I had to pump because she couldn't feed. And we sang songs. We had a little worship routine. So we would sing 5 little songs, and then we'd have a prayer. We'd do the Sabbath school lesson, and then we'd finish up with a song and a prayer.
Now you're talking about she's only months old when you're doing all this.
Oh yeah, just a tiny little baby.
That's remarkable, Valerie.
Because I wanted her to have the opportunity to go to heaven. She needed to know who Jesus was. So that's what kind of kept my connection to God, because I really didn't have a whole lot to say to him. I didn't have anything. I've just felt so gutted that this beautiful baby wasn't supposed to live past a year.
Wow.
But she brought joy.
Yeah, well, you were pouring out so much. You were pouring out so much into her, and God was pouring into you at the same time.
Yes. Not that I probably didn't recognize it, but yes, he was.
But he must have been, or you would have had nothing to pour out. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it took a long time to be able to trust God again, because I had trusted him with my whole heart that this baby was going to be safe. He'd blessed me with life within my tummy, and I just trusted that he would take care of her and bring her into the world. And I just felt so let down when we had the prolapse cord, and she was, as I say, not given very long to live.
So where was your where were your friends and family and like church family? How did that work?
I live in Canada. My family are in England. My siblings, my mom is in England. Um, my church family, we belong to a large church, and it was hard for them, because I remember while I was pregnant, I had been asked to participate in a program where I shared the miracle of getting pregnant after 7 years of trying. And so I believe a lot of people were just gutted when they heard about what happened to Melody. And I have since later, over the years, I've had a number of people say to us, both Scott and I, how we handled the situation with Melody Ann gave them hope and renewed their relationship with God, because they felt for us just as we were feeling for our situation, they were feeling it too. So it was not only us having to deal with it, but them dealing with it. And Scott and I didn't realize people were watching how we were coping, and that's what gave them the opportunity to move forward as well.
Yeah. In the Beatitudes, where it says, "Blessed are those who mourn," it's like mourning in our circumstance, and that's like a roadmap. That's where Jesus is. He's with the people who are in those mourning situations. So they would have recognized he was with you as well, and walking so close with you guys.
And Scott and I decided, and Melody Ann was very young, that if Melody Ann only has a year, we're going to make it the best year. So we poured a lot into Melody Ann, teaching her things like we would teach anybody else. I think that it took me, I think if I remember rightly, it took me about 3 weeks to fully bond with Melody Ann, because I'm kind of trying to swirl around in my head that, well, we don't think she's going to last more than a year. And they didn't give me the opportunity to sort of have skin on skin with her when I was in the NICU. And so I think they were preparing Scott and I for her passing. So they didn't really encourage us to really bond with her. So it took me about 3 weeks to fully bond with her and realize, you know what, this is going to be the best year of our lives, and we're going to make this her year the best that it can be for her. And so we poured into her, and I remember we were teaching about colors and numbers and like you would any other child. And we didn't know, for a few months, she was soaking all of this stuff in. And I remember we had this toy that was kind of like an arch thing on legs, and it had piano keys, and they were different colors. And I remember, I can't remember how old she would have been now, maybe 18 months, between 18 months and 2 years. And I remember asking her, okay, can you show us which is the purple key? Not really expecting her to do it, but she did. Oh, okay. Well, then maybe can you show me the yellow key? And she did. So that just reinforced to us, and maybe she was a little bit younger, but that just reinforced to us that she was taking life in. She was absorbing what was going on. So that just kind of gave us the impetus to just keep raising the bar with her. When she got to a year, it was almost like shackles fell off us. It was like, okay, we can refocus now what our goals are going to be.
I was just going to ask that. When did you recognize that she was going to live longer than a year?
When we got to the year, it was kind of like, she showed no signs of failing. She was strong. She's always been strong. She always had a strong cough, which I believe is why she's still with us today. We were told she would have respiratory issues, and she did. The first sort of few years, we were dealing with a lot of sort of colds and coughs and infections and all that kind of stuff. But she fought through all of them. And so when she got to a year, it's like, yes, she's going to do this. She's going to do this. So that gave us the opportunity to shift our mindset and start setting some goals for her. And when we, like the story with the piano keys, as I was telling you, when we realized that, it was like, okay, well, what else can we teach her? What else can she show us? And she, as every time we raised the bar, she would need it. So then we would raise it a little bit more, and she would need it. And she just has been such a blessing in many ways. And I just praise God for helping Scott and I just to keep fighting and keep pushing for her and challenging her and moving her forward. And through that has helped keep that connection, the trust factor. And I didn't realize for a long time Linda, the trust factor, because I was kind of going through the motions with God, yep, showing up at church, paying my tithe, doing my prayers, and feeling like I had somewhat of a connection, but not the same connection that I had when I was pregnant. But I didn't realize for a long time that the trust was not there. I was not really trusting God with all of me, because I felt like he'd let me down with my most vulnerable was when I was pregnant. So I was blessed to have a group of ladies that kept inviting me to join their trustworthy group. And Lisa Turkers did, and this was when I joined, was when she did her trustworthy study. These ladies decided they wanted to do that and invited me to it. So going through that study helped me recognize the depth of how I was not trusting God with every area of my life. So, so that was a journey. And that didn't happen overnight for that trust to build, because as you know, with any kind of relationship, it takes time to trust. But I do have many, many instances when I can look back over Melody Ann's life and see where God has intervened, interjected, utilized Melody Ann's story to help bless someone else. And me then having the impetus to move forward, to get out into the community of people with disabilities and do things for people in the community with disabilities. So because of Melody Ann, we started a camp for children using communication devices. I was able to work with in Calgary, where you have the school board, where they have the speech language pathologists, and sort of, get working with them to create a network where people were actually, the SLPs were getting together and working with how can we create awareness and get more resources together for these children using communication devices. So Melody Ann's life has springboarded some of those activities that I've been able to be engaged in.
Yeah, you had mentioned an SLP?
Yes, speech language pathologist.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to confirm that. Yeah. So you started this camp?
Yes, in 2016. So we had, Melody Ann had a speech language pathologist. Her name was Trish, and she had been to a conference, and a lady called Anne Kuhlmeier was presenting at this conference, and Anne is from Idaho, and she has been running camps for children using communication devices now for, I want to say 14, 15 years. And so Trish said, oh, there's this camp going on. It's only $75. And I'm thinking, Idaho? Okay, I guess for $75. But in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to pull as much information as I can, because there needs to be a camp here in Alberta. So,
yeah, at least somewhere in Canada. Yeah.
Yes. So we went down. So we took 2 days to drive down there. It was a team of 6 of us. So my husband, myself, our 2 children, and then I had a couple of aides that work with Melody Ann come down as well with us. And it was such a wonderful experience, and just a sense of community, and just for Melody Ann to have a camp that's with other kids like her, which is such amazing. We actually went 4 years in a row.
Okay.
In that time, so that was 2012, and then in 2016 we started our own camp, and we were blessed that Anne was co-director with us, and so she helped facilitate our first camp as well. So
okay, and that's close to Calgary?
We have the camp, we have been running it at Camp Horizon in Bragg Creek, but with the pandemic we've had to go virtual. So the last 2 years we've been doing the camp virtually. So that's opened it up a little bit. So we actually this year had students and campers from Alberta, Ontario, and BC. And
how did they do online?
They actually did well. I was actually just checking out the evaluations that the parents filled out, and all of it that I just had a quick look at it, but it all looked like we had excellent responses, that they felt it was appropriate. The activities that were chosen were appropriate. They liked the format. And so we're just thankful that we've been able to pivot. Now I have to hold my hand up and say, I am the parent voice. I do not do any of the kind of data, the details of planning and all of that kind of stuff. That would be Karen Pollock, who is the University of Alberta. She works in the speech language department, and March of Dimes. We're partnered with March of Dimes as well. So they're the
Okay.
ones that do all the technical piece, and they present the camp. I'm just on the committee, and I just have a parent voice. So
Not just a parent voice. No. No, God's given you a boldness to share his heart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
to speak up and speak up for the kids that can't, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And with the online, it would actually be an opportunity for them to meet other kids like all over Canada too, that wouldn't necessarily have been able to come to a camp in Alberta.
Right, exactly. And it is totally a different experience from the in-person to the online. But the beautiful thing about this camp is that we have SLP students partnering with the campers so that they can get experience, hands-on experience with a child using, or a person using a communication device. So the camp wouldn't run without those students. So we're just so thankful that they're getting benefit, our campers are getting benefit. And then also, then the beautiful thing with the online is that the parents are a little bit more involved. So they get to sort of see what the children are doing because they're working with them.
And know each other.
Yes.
And that would be a big part of it too, just to connect and support each other in your journey.
Totally. Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, for people who don't know, who aren't aware, can you describe what the communication board is?
Sure. Yeah. So there's different ways of communicating that people that have no actual vocal voice. And you can have low tech way up to high tech. So your low tech would be picture symbols. So you can create a book or have a felt board. We went through all of this with Melody Ann. So we had a felt board with the symbols on, and we would point to the symbols and explain to them what they were for Melody Ann. We would give her choices. Is this what you want to say, or this what you want to say? So you go from your low tech, you can create a binder with different pages with different symbols and things on it as well. And so Melody Ann went through all of that, and then we kind of went to a lower, so mid-tech, where you'd be looking at sort of a button that would say something for you. So one of the things we used to do with Melody Ann was the Brown Bear book. So we would record on this button, Brown Bear, what do you see? And so she would be then part of the story. So I would read from the book, and then I would pause. Melody Ann would push the button to say the next phase. So that would be sort of moving into sort of mid-tech. And then there are different, I'm certainly not an expert on this. I can only really speak for what Melody Ann has used. But there are different other mid-tech things where there might be 3 or 4 buttons that you could press something and have different phrases on it. And then we're now up to a high-tech with what Melody Ann has. It's almost like a computer tablet where there are 60 symbols on a page. And you can go through them in quadrants. So you might have a quadrant, push a button to get that quadrant, and then it would scan each row. And then she push a button to hit the row where the symbol is that she wants to articulate. And then it would go symbol by symbol by symbol along the row, and she would push a button. So it can be symbols, it can be phrases. So Melody Ann is able to create sentences, or we can program in like a whole paragraph. For instance, we have something that says, I use a communication device. It might take me a while to say what I want to say. Please be patient. So we can put in phrases like that as well.
Wow. Yeah, technology's come a long way.
Oh, yes. And it's just been so awesome to see Melody Ann develop with that and be able to sort of communicate with us and share what she's feeling. A lot of the times it's requests. I want.
Yeah, kids, right?
Yeah. But we have transitioned her to move from just I wants to making comments on things or asking questions.
Yeah, wow. And so does Melody Ann live at home now?
No, Melody Ann, we launched Melody Ann 3 years ago now. As a working mom of 2 and being married as well, it was difficult to keep all the balls in the air. So not only was I working, being a mom to 2 children, being a wife, I was also payroll, HR. So I would have to put out ads to get staff to help us with Melody Ann because it was Melody Ann is dependent for everything, needs 24-hour care. So I would be the one putting out the ads, doing the interviews, hiring, training, doing the T4s and putting in the taxes and all that kind of stuff. It got to be a bit much. And so it got to a point where I knew I couldn't keep all the balls in the air anymore. So Melody Ann, we were in a situation where we'd had a caregiver for 6.5 years, totally family, and knew Melody Ann inside out. We were very blessed, and she decided to leave. She wanted to sort of try branching out into a different career, which was fine, except it left Scott and I with no one because we don't have any family here.
Well, and when and when she's been there for so long, she'd be like family. So really difficult to replace. Yeah,
totally. So then it made us think about, okay, what do we need to do something that's going to be sustainable? We can't keep hiring people and hoping that they're going to stay. So we ended up going back to something that we thought about was when Melody Ann was 12, was having her stay in the home because it was wheelchair accessible. And creating a forever home for Melody Ann, which is kind of like a group home. So that's what we did. It was a long, I guess, relatively speaking, it wasn't long, but it seemed long at the time. So we were 18 months trying to create this. So we were needing to get funding because we couldn't afford to do this and hire staff 24/7 for Melody Ann. So we were in touch with an agency, and the agency said, well, we can just try and make it happen. I was fortunate that the president of this agency had done this herself. She had walked the walk. She understood where I was coming from. She was a mother of someone with special needs. She had created a home for her son. So she knew it was possible. It was just a matter of the funding piece. So and that's another story for another time, that was quite the journey to get that all set up, and then to step out in faith to buy another house and not know that the funding was in place was huge. So we had the house that I'm sitting in right now. We had bought it. We were supposed to move in at the end of March, but I didn't know at the end of March that the funding was coming to start Melody Ann's place, her forever home, which we've called Eden House. That's Melody Ann's middle name is Eden.
Oh,
and we chose it as well because it was the beginning of Melody Ann's independence. So the start of her independence. So yeah, so Melody Ann has been for 3.5 years now, or almost 3.5 years, living independent of us. That was, again, as I say, it's a story for another time, was extremely difficult to hand over my child because
she would have only been 16. Yeah.
And she was only 16. Yeah. She was only 16. But it has been a beautiful journey, and to see how she has developed with empathy and recognizing that it's not all about her, having to be tolerant of other people's music and having to maybe wait a few minutes for some, for some care or whatever the case may be. But she has thrived. It's just been so lovely. And just for me to just be able to be mom, I don't have to be thinking about when's the next feed? Do I need to change her? When's the next medication due? Do we need to change her position? I don't have to think about any of that. I can just go and be mom when I see her.
Yeah. Yeah. And just have fun and make memories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does she have someone else living with her? She has
two other young ladies with disabilities. Okay. So one of them is very similar to her, also in a wheelchair, G-tube fed and nonverbal, using a communication device. And the other young lady has Rett syndrome, so nonverbal, but still has some mobility.
Okay. Wow. That's worked out really well then.
Yes. And so again, it gives us another glimpse of how God has blessed us with Melody Ann's life, because now these two young ladies have an opportunity to live independent of their parents. And Eden House has created a workplace for, I think there's about 13 staff. So again, it's God has been gracious in giving us glimpses of how Melody Ann's life has impacted others.
And I keep hearing the song, I will praise you in the storm.
Yeah, it took me a long time to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Building that trust again, having felt so deep, yeah, it felt so let down. It was extremely difficult, but now I've come to a place where I can praise God and I can trust him again. But it was a long journey.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's just where I felt like he sees you.
Some days I felt like he didn't. Sometimes, there were lots of days I felt invisible and felt like my prayers were not going beyond the roof. But yeah, and it's just so, I just feel like I'm now walking in the sunshine again, and trusting God. And especially now as I'm certifying as a coach and stepping out to start a business, it's like, okay, God, I'm not letting go of your righteous right hand. And because I've seen how he's led me in the past, because he has preserved Melody Ann's life, because I've seen how her life has impacted others, because he has blessed us with this home, even though we shouldn't have been able to qualify for another mortgage, how he is moving in Melody Ann's life, how he's moving in my life, giving me opportunities. I can look back and see, yeah, he's gonna continue to be with me. He's with me. He's walking with me. I can trust him now.
So you've overcome.
I didn't get what I wanted because I was just going to say, I didn't quite get what I wanted. And when I was pregnant, I had all these dreams for Melody Ann, because I didn't figure skate as a child. I was raised in England. My daughter was going to figure skate. I had all these dreams for her. And when she was born, and when we recognized what was going on and that those dreams would never be fulfilled, I had to shift. And the shift wasn't easy. But I'm recognizing now that God will bring me to something and help me do the shift so that I can be what he's intended for me to be. I wouldn't have picked this life, probably this path, but I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to learn more from him, to trust more in him, to depend more on him, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't create Eden House without his help.
But you're creating dreams with him.
Yeah. And I remember saying to God, okay, because I'm an A-type personality. Like I like to know what's going on. I'm a planner. And I remember saying over and over, okay, God, I'm going to get out of the driving seat here. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to let you take over because I can't do this. This is too big for me. And he did it.
And you were able to.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine that. Yes.
A-type personality, that's a big thing just in itself. Yeah. Well, good for you. That's been quite the journey. So as an overcomer through these huge trials and huge disappointments, and just walking through your dreams as they're changing, is there anything that you could say to encourage other moms or other people?
Other sisters in Christ, yes, or others, yes. Yes. I'm thinking that don't ever let go. You might want to turn your back. You might want to wallow in your self-pity, in the fact that things didn't go the way you wanted them to go. And it's hard in the moment to know that God has better for you. It's really hard in the moment to know that God has better. And sometimes we want what's good, but really God has better for us. And we just have to trust the process and know that if something's disappointing and it hasn't gone the way you want it to go, it's because God has better for you.
That's a really good, that's a good word. Yeah, because we wouldn't initially see it as being the better.
Right.
But he knows what we need.
Exactly. And he knows us more than we know ourselves. And he sees the big picture. He's orchestrating. And that's the other thing that I've learned over the years as well with Melody Ann, that God is orchestrating everything for his good, for our good, and for his glory. And so trusting that God has got it, even if we can't see, and just going with the process that God has got this and he will lead you through it. Because like I said, he's got better in store for you.
Yeah. And we just keep walking one day at a time, one step at a time, and just trust him in the step.
Yeah. And the other thing as well, for us, what keeps Scott and I going is the fact that one day one day we'll see Melody Ann dancing around that tree of life. We will hear her singing with the angels, and she will be whole the way he intended her to be. So that's what keeps us going, because we want to be there. We want to see her made whole.
Yes. Yes. And she will. Yeah. And you will.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Valerie, thank you for being so real, so vulnerable, in telling and sharing a really tough story. There's a lot of women have dreams that have not happened the way we thought they were going to, and it's hard to know how to walk through disappointment. And you've given us a good view of what your journey's been like, and just to have hope and just to hang on to it.
Yes.
Because he's not going to leave us.
No, nor forsake us.
If he's brought us into it, he's going to walk through it with us.
Yeah. And on the days when it gets tough, he's going to carry us.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing.
Very well.
Just really appreciate it. And I'm sure that people will be inspired by your story.
And thank you for your ministry, and thank you for allowing me to share.
Great. We'll talk to you soon, Valerie.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.